Hey guys, what's up? I'm Kit. This is SchizoKitzo. It's time to get crazy. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about cyclothymia, which I'll explain what it is later in the video. It's not important that I do it right now, but in short, it's a mood disorder that I was diagnosed with when I was a senior in high school. I was 17 years old. And this was the beginning of a very, very, very tough road for me, one that arguably I am still on. But yeah, let's get started. I remember very clearly being depressed in the 8th grade. That was when a lot of my symptoms started. Like, that's when my voices showed up for the first time. But I remember being very depressed. I remember being very sad all the time. I would read to escape the world and get lost in a book so that I wouldn't have to deal with my life. Part of this was that my mother and I would argue all the time. We had a lot of issues at that point. We're better now. It's perfectly fine now. But back then we had a lot of issues. We didn't get along, and that definitely made it worse. But at the same time, in the midst of my depression, I would have these moods I would get into where I would just clean everything. I actually called them cleaning moods. And I would basically have the urge to clean every single surface in the house, every single surface in my room, every single surface in the bathroom. And I would just do it until like 2 a.m., go to sleep, and then go to school the next day and be perfectly fine and not tired at all. I would go on to actually end up cleaning the entire house for my mom because I was basically harnessing my mania at the time. And yeah, I didn't know any better, but that was basically what it was. So I thought at that point that all I had was depression, nothing even close to mania. All in all, I was making straight A's, I had a decent social life, and besides the depression, I didn't really think anything was really wrong with me. After all, I would get in these super productive moods where I could do anything and everything that I wanted to do. Why would I think that would be a bad thing? But this went on for many, many, many years. And as you could probably guess, things got worse and worse and worse the more time passed on. And I started making B's in my classes. I was no longer the straight A student. My social life was rapidly diminishing because people were scared of me. Things were going downhill at this point. I was in theater, which gave me some friends. Even if I was on the principal cast and even the main person in the whole thing, I still didn't have the social life that I craved so badly. I mean, what high schooler doesn't want a good stable squad, a good stable group of friends? So senior year rolls around. This is 2013 at this point. I graduated in 2014. So this is 2013 at the time. And I was in a physics class, and I wasn't really good at physics. At this point, I used to be really good at math growing up. Like, I had no issues with math, but my brain was basically like, it was getting the brain damage that's associated with mood disorders and schizoaffective disorder. Like, schizoaffective disorder affects your memory and how you process things, specifically verbal memory, which I have a major issue with. So, but math is basically like, think about a really long problem. And so I'm going through the problem, and I got the first part right? And I get to the second part, and the second part, well, I don't know what it means because I totally forgot what the first part was. So basically, I can't complete a multi-step problem, so I was left being really frustrated in physics class because I couldn't do the work. And so what happened to me is that I would just break down crying in the middle of class. Like, I would start sobbing at my desk. I sat in the back, so people didn't necessarily see me, but of course they heard me, and this usually ended in me rushing out of the room to go cry alone in the bathroom, and things were not great. But then for some reason, the next hour, when I went to psychology, I would be energetic, hyper, and super productive. So this went on the up and down on the hour cycle, and yeah, that was when things started getting a little bit more serious for me. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was what's called rapid cycling, meaning I was going very quickly from being up to being down. As one could imagine, this was exhausting. I was exhausted by this. My moods were killing me. It was terrible. And my teachers were starting to get worried. And I was kind of starting to get the inkling that it might not be just depression. I remember swinging on an Eno in the woods with my boyfriend at the time on the family farm. We were good for each other. He was very good to me, but we didn't make it. But that's a story for another day. But I remember swinging on that hammock and asking him, hey, do you think I'm bipolar? And I remember him looking right at me and saying, maybe. And that was when I realized I really had a problem and I had to get help. But I didn't really know how to do that. I was in high school. It's not like I knew who to call or what to do. But life found a way for me. I was actually at a doctor's appointment for a routine physical. And I was also there because I had a really painful cyst on my tailbone, which wasn't actually a big deal, but at this point in my life, everything was a big deal. Everything was catastrophic. Everything set me up or set me down because I was that sensitive to the world around me. I had no emotion regulation. I had no regulation of my emotions. And I remember talking with my doctor, and she was talking to me about the cyst, and I freaked out and I started crying. The same type of crying that happened when I was in physics. This hopeless, all-encompassing feeling of just wanting to scream and cry for, frankly, not really much of a reason at all. And I basically told her, I'm like, I think something's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on in my head. I think I'm depressed. I think I might be like, I'm definitely way high energy, but it's not really good anymore. And I was explaining all this stuff to her, and it was really, really, really fast. But she managed to catch all of it, and she said, hey, do you want to see someone about it? And I immediately went, yes. But anyway, I was at my doctor's office, and she said, hey, do you want to see someone? I know I just said this, but I said yes. And she set me up with the psychiatrist that I've had for 8 years now, and things went great. But I'll get to that in a second. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But being diagnosed with cyclothymia for me was not a very quick process. Like, even once I told my doctor I wanted to see somebody, I still had to get an appointment with the treatment center that I ended up going to. And then once I had an appointment, I had to go and I had to fill out this long questionnaire, and then be evaluated for over an hour by a psychologist that asked me even more questions. And then, and only then, after a couple weeks had passed after that initial evaluation, could I actually see the psychiatrist. So when I finally sat down in my psychiatrist's office for the first time, he diagnosed me with cyclothymia, and my first thought was, what is that? So I told you guys in the beginning of the video that I would tell you what cyclothymia is. So here we go. So cyclothymia is actually a really mild mood disorder, in the sense that it is very similar to bipolar disorder, both bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, in the sense that it has ups and downs, but it's different in the terms of the severity of the illness, such as the downs don't meet the criteria for a major depressive episode, while the ups don't meet the criteria for a hypomanic episode or a mild manic episode. Hypomania is typical of bipolar 2, full mania is typical of bipolar 1. Both bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 have major depressive episodes involved in them, and I will make a future video talking about the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, because I think it's a very important difference, and a lot of people don't know that bipolar disorder is categorized into, well, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. But as you might think, cyclothymia is sometimes jokingly referred to as bipolar 3. So here's a diagram to kind of help explain the difference between the three disorders. And you can kind of see the green line, that's cyclothymia, and how it is, the curves are not as extreme as bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. My doctor then put me on Lamictal. I will link my review of Lamictal in the cards, so check that out if you want to learn more about Lamictal. And it actually changed everything for me. Lamictal treats bipolar depression. It has nothing to do with mania, and at the time my little mini manic episodes weren't anything to be concerned about. Now they're very concerning, but back then they weren't concerning at all. They were just like, okay, I just get productive and I clean sometimes. And so though they didn't need treatment, but the depression needed treatment. And so Lamictal treated my bipolar depression, and my whole entire life changed. People wanted to hang out with me. I got like real friends because I wasn't so up and down and crying all the time. And for a long time, for the next 4 years, Lamictal would be the only pill that I took. But this was the beginning of a very, very, very long road with schizoaffective disorder. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I am still very much on that road. But hey, I'm gonna end the video here. Hope you guys learned a little bit about cyclothymia, but I also hope that you found some joy, relatability, happiness, entertainment of learning about how I was diagnosed with my first mood disorder. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you, as always, for joining me in making the uncomfortable comfortable. Bye-bye.